In today's review, we will not leave Earth's neighborhood and instead check out the first lunar colony Artemis in Andy Weir's second novel that he published in 2017. The novel of the same name is a 305-page-long standalone novel that takes place in the 2080s. It is still considered to be hard sci-fi, although it takes more liberties than Andy Weir's breakthrough success The Martian. The story is mostly confined to the lunar station of Artemis, with some sojourns to its surroundings, although the station itself is described in a pretty detailed fashion. Thus, in my subjective opinion, it barely manages to achieve a score higher in the world building and scope category than The Martian. In terms of original ideas, Artemis is more derivative than groundbreaking, as the trope of life on a lunar station has been around for decades. However, it does have its unique moments here and there. With respect to the dramatis personae, there are about 10 named characters in the book, and we experience the story through Jasmine, Bashara, the protagonist and sole point of view character. Hence, it is similar to The Martian if we look at these numbers. But Artemis features noticeably more character interaction due to the obvious fact that the protagonist of Artemis is not stranded alone on an alien planet. Also, similar to The Martian, there have been talks about a movie adaptation of Artemis, with Phil Lord and Chris Miller as directors, and Geneva Robertson-Dworet writing the screenplay. We will see how this turns out, if at all, since there is no official release date yet. Based on the lists on Goodreads, the novel Artemis was nominated for 6 awards, and it ended up winning 3 of them. Furthermore, the popular reception is not quite clear-cut, but rather polarized, as Artemis scores 3.8 out of 5 stars, based on 10,000s of Goodreads, Library Thing and Amazon ratings and reviews. We will take a more detailed look at the main recurring criticisms later in this video. But first, let us briefly set the stage for the plot of the novel. The story kicks off when Bashara, a 26-year-old woman barely scraping by working as a porter in the lunar city of Artemis and earning a bit on the side as a smuggler of illegal contraband, sees her chance to get a life-changing sum of money. Will this allow her to finally afford to earn her certification as an EVA specialist, thus generating a stable and sightly income? Will she be able to leave her present life behind and to make amends for events that occurred in her past? One minor drawback of this unique opportunity that she was offered is the fact that she will receive the reward only for committing some serious acts of sabotage, which will be the foundation for a literal corporate hostile takeover. To no one's surprise, this easy job goes sideways, and Jazz finds herself in the middle of a turf war of different factions vying for control of Artemis. Thus, the stakes increase considerably for Jazz, as everything devolves into a life and death situation for her. Will she be able to get out of it unscathed? Or maybe even on top? We shall see. Now let us look back to the main recurring criticisms related to Artemis. For one, the main character, Bashara, is not everyone's cup of tea. If you have read or seen The Martian, then you can think of Jazz having a similar jokey attitude as Mark Watney, while also being more sarcastic, snarky and cynical in general. I can understand this criticism, but in my personal opinion it is not a deal breaker. I would even add that Jazz as a character, with all her personal flaws, is imbued with more depth than Mark Watney, especially once we learn throughout the novel what her true motivations are. Also, Jazz is relatable due to her struggles as quote-unquote filthy commoner, especially when compared to other more exalted protagonists that annoyed me in the past. Swan or Zoe from 2312 or Blue Mars respectively would come to mind. However, make no mistake, Jazz is not exceptional as a character either. Another point of criticism that was often raised was in relation to the plot. In my view, the plot is straightforward and the motivations of most of the different characters and factions are understandable once we get to know them. Furthermore, the ultimate driving force for the events that transpire in Artemis are potentially grounded in reality. Granted, it is not a larger-than-life story describing how the universe was saved from an unimaginable evil, or how humanity was steered to a better future. But not every story has to be that way. In addition, the quite detailed description of welding also attracted the ire of some reviewers. And indeed, there is welding. Quite a bit of welding. But it is usually welding with a purpose, even though this statement might sound a bit odd. However, I do have my own points of criticism. Unfortunately, they may contain a few minor spoilers for the story of Artemis, so beware. For one, the economic viability of Artemis up to the events and including the novel as a tourist location, as well as a tax and money laundering haven, do strain the suspension of disbelief. Specifically, the financial paradise part seems odd, as there are already numerous small nations on Earth providing these services. So there is no unique selling point to have such a tax haven specifically on the moon. Also, the fact that somehow Kenya achieved a pivotal role in the lunar colonization with setting up Artemis is only briefly discussed, and it does not really influence the rest of the story. Granted, Kenya is located at the equator, which gives it an edge in terms of space launches. However, there are numerous other states and nations with a similar privilege in terms of orbital velocity. Also, how this changes the relationship with countries and especially the more ambitious powers on Earth is never really explained either. Overall, Artemis is a solid, relatively short novel telling a rather small-scale, self-contained story focused on a character that not everyone will like. I thought that Artemis was quite an easy read, even though I would not call it a page-turner either. Also, having read Artemis back in 2017 when it came out, there are just very few parts of the novel that I could actively remember and that stood out to me, unlike in other novels that would frequently have certain characters, ideas, concepts, settings, or plots that did stand the test of time, or rather the test of my slowly waning memory. Given these boundary conditions, I expect that you will be mature enough to make up your own mind whether Artemis is something for you or not. If you liked this video, you may also enjoy the other reviews and content on my channel. Feel free to leave a comment if you want to discuss the novels or if you want to suggest other books that I should review in the future. Please consider upvoting and subscribing, it is much appreciated. Thank you for watching and until next time.